I'm Jim Fitzgerald. I'm the president of IT Optimization. I'm going to go through ITIL version 3. I'm going to try to answer a couple questions for you. One, is it achievable? Is it worth achieving? The presentation structure is going to be by book. Within each of the books, I'm going to talk about different processes and the interconnection of those different processes. Next, let's talk about ITIL in general. ITIL is a reference architecture, and it is only a high-level process architecture. As you know, as you have implemented it, you're relying on the software vendor to give you the low-level implementation of it. But ITIL does not define the low-level architecture. It is widely adopted in the IT industry. I want to make a point about this because if you adopt it in your industry and you are doing really well at it, that may give you a competitive advantage. But remember that ITIL also limits you. It constrains you to their processes, not other processes. So you may also get a competitive advantage by moving outside of ITIL. ITIL does not have version numbers, and each revision builds on a previous revision. Next, let's overview the ITIL books. As an IT organization, the first thing you'll do is create a vision. That is the idea about where the IT organization is going to go in the future. Then you develop goals to accomplish that vision. Underneath the goals, you have strategies and tactics. ITIL starts with the strategy part, assuming you already have your goals and you already have your vision. The 5 ITIL books are all around service, starting with strategy, then design, transition, operation, and continuous service improvement. This follows the Deming life cycle pretty well, where strategy is all about planning, designing is about doing, transition is also about doing, but more importantly about checking, and then operation is acting, and then finally continuous service improvement is driving efficiencies back into the processes and the services. ITIL version 3 has very much a service focus, which I will discuss a little bit more in the future. Now let's start our detailed discussion. This slide just covers some presentation bookkeeping. Because there were some processes already defined in ITIL version 2, I've labeled those the revision 2 processes, and those will be in the orange boxes. The new processes will be in the other boxes. Now, let's start the presentation with service strategy. ITIL version 3 starts with some business concepts. First is around the market spaces. So you have a company and you provide products and services for your customers. There's competition for those products and services. Depending on how well you can market, design, and the other aspects of your business, those products and services, there will be demand for them. When that demand is satisfied, you generate income. Service portfolio management is the first ITIL version 3 process that we're going to talk about in this discussion. I want to make a few points about that, but first of all, let's define what we're talking about. Of course, service portfolio management's job is to manage the service portfolio. Let's look at a definition of the service portfolio from the ITIL book. The complete set of services that are managed by a service provider. The service portfolio is used to manage the entire life cycle of all services and includes 3 categories: service pipeline, service catalog, and retired services. I have a few questions I think you should ask yourself about the service portfolio management process. Number 1, what is the value you will get from having a service portfolio? 2, what is the audience that you will publish your service portfolio to? And lastly, what goal does it support? Okay, moving on to financial management. Financial management is an ITIL version 2 process, but has been expanded in ITIL version 3. Financial management is responsible for doing the pricing on the different services in the service portfolio, and it also supports chargeback. Demand management is an ITIL version 3 process. I had some pretty high hopes for demand management, but unfortunately was disappointed. And the reason is because demand management, in my mind, has two aspects to it. There's reactive demand management and proactive demand management. Businesses are really interested in proactive demand management, and ITIL discusses reactive demand management. What I mean by that is that demand management, in summary, looks at the demand of different IT services and changes the charge on those services based on demand. So if you have more demand in one area, you may be willing to pay more for the services. Now, this puts a lot of process in, and I'm not sure that you're going to get out of the process the value that you expect when you build the process. As an aside, I've included this part of the slide referencing business strategies companies focus on. Now, all companies focus on all three of these business strategies. However, the best companies will focus heaviest on one of these three strategies and then also be good in the other two. From an IT point of view, IT can support all three of these business strategies, and it might be interesting to look at services from a business strategy point of view. Now let's talk about service design. To start the service design discussion, let's talk first about customers and service level agreements. First of all, what is a customer from an ITIL point of view? Let's go back again and look at the definition. Someone who buys goods or services. Now, I think the next part of the definition is really the critical part. The customer of an IT service provider is the person or group that defines and agrees the service level targets. To summarize that, a customer for IT is the individual or group that pays the bills. So it may be a P&L owner, it may be a department owner, but it's that individual or group that pays the bills. Everyone else in that group would be a user. So, from a service level agreement point of view, what I've seen in the industry is service level agreements around we will respond to an incident in a certain amount of time, we will respond to individuals in a certain amount of time. But this does not go back to what customers really care about. So I wrote a blog on what customers really care about, what IT customers really care about. My question to you is, do you have a service level agreement on your mission critical business services? And if not, how come? Another point I want to make is measurement design. That's a key part. It's the metrics for a service level agreement. Next, let's talk about utility and warranty. Now we're introducing the concept of utility and warranty, specifically around a service level agreement. So utility, from an ITIL point of view, is the functionality offered by a product or service to meet a particular need. In other words, that is the what it does. So if you think about a customer, what they want for their business customer is they want a certain performance. Say that you have a website and you're going to look up a product, you want a certain performance. IT looks at that as a capacity because IT knows that capacity is correlated and drives performance. The customer also wants the service to be up for their customers. IT knows that that's availability management. Now, security management I have highlighted here as a new process, but it is not really a new ITIL version 3 process. It has just been enhanced, I think, and redefined a little bit in ITIL version 3. In ITIL version 3, security management is referring to the security of the company's internal information and the company's customers' information. Now, I wrote a couple blogs that you might be interested in. One is about what businesses care about, and that kind of correlates to the service level management piece that's here. And another one is on the service availability from a business point of view. Okay, let's move on and talk about service catalog management. You'll see the word service bandied around quite a bit here on this slide. There's a service portfolio. There's a service level agreement. There's a service catalog. Now, I think it's very important that service is defined here. Let's take a quick look at how ITIL defines service. A means of delivering value to customers. Okay, a means of delivering value to customers. If I think of a service level agreement, I think of what a customer thinks of as value, and we discussed it before. Performance, availability, security, auditing, things like that are all important for a customer around a service. Now, a service catalog, does it use the same definition of service in a service catalog? Well, if you've got an iPhone in there, that's not necessarily a service. But what about a server? What about a database solution? What about an ERP solution? The same thing with the service portfolio. To what level of detail will you go with your service portfolio? A business cares about a sales management solution. But are you going to put a sales management solution in your service portfolio? Or are you going to put the components, maybe web servers or database servers? Or are you going to have servers in there and storage devices? That is something you're going to have to figure out yourself, because ITIL does not give much guidance in the definition of what a service really is. The next new ITIL version 3 process we'll talk about is supplier management. Now, supplier management is something you are probably already doing, but it's nice to have a process around it. So I think this is an important ITIL version 3 process. If you look at Japanese manufacturing and the way they look at suppliers, suppliers are individual or companies they have a long-term relationship with. They provide real value back to their business. That may be something that IT should consider, as opposed to a supplier provides widgets or some component of a solution. Let's take a look at service owner at the top. I think that gets back to the same problem we had before, as what is the service that the service owner will own? Is it a business-focused service? Is it an IT-focused service? Is it a component of a service? I think that particular position is probably a little bit early in the process here. Now, in ITIL version 2, you had a process owner, and then you had a process operator. So the process owner would be in the design phase, in the strategy phase, where they would design the process. They would be responsible for the overall output of the process, and the operator would do the day-to-day management of the process. And then you have process engineers or individual contributors that would do work on the process. I think that it's important that people understand that a service is made up of technologies and the processes that manage and operate those technologies. So that's the relationship between service and process. Let's take a look at service transition. Service transition is responsible for taking the design and driving that into a solution for operation. So like in the manufacturing industry, there's going to be a lot of interaction back and forth between transition and design, since design is going to come up with what they believe is the best solution, and then transition is going to see how well it can be implemented. So let's talk about the first ITIL version 3 process here, which is release and deployment management. Now, you already have an asset management solution. You already have configuration management and change management. Release and deployment management is something that you have already been doing, but now there's a process around it. Release and deployment management is a very different process than asset configuration and change management, because it is distributed and you rely on subject management experts to do it. So in change management, you can have one detailed change process that applies to everything. But release and deployment management, you cannot do that because different technologies require different expertise and different steps or activities within the process to make it happen. So just remember, it is a way different process than change and asset and configuration. ITIL version 3 has implemented the concept of the service knowledge management system. I think what they've done is taken all the major databases and put them together into this system. Some of these databases existed before, like the problem management database, the configuration management database, the knowledge management database, and some are new, like the service portfolio. Below, I have something called DIKW, which stands for Data, Information, Knowledge, Wisdom. The idea there is that you have data sitting on disk drives that, if you look at, become information that you can generate knowledge from, and if you have enough knowledge, you'll generate wisdom. Let me give you an example of that. In proactive problem management, you're going to be querying the CMDB for configuration items that have had problems or issues. So the CMDB has data, and that data represents information, the CIs. And the knowledge is, okay, these CIs, this CI has an issue, and this CI has an issue, and this one doesn't. Wisdom comes from, well, this CI has an issue, and this is the same CI in a different area, and it has an issue. So that's where the wisdom comes from. Next, take a look at some of the other important processes that actually have to do about transition. These three new ITIL version 3 processes, transition planning and support, evaluation, service testing and validation, are not operational processes. These are specifically service transition processes. So these processes will be used for either implementing a new ITIL process, a new non-ITIL process, or a modification to a process. Let's take a look at service operation. I won't spend much time on these operational processes that you've already seen in ITIL version 2. However, I do want to make a couple points. One is, all those ITIL processes other than change and problem directly face individuals in the IT organization and external customers to the company. Change management, for instance, also faces IT and customers through implementing new services and capabilities, business capabilities, and also helping stabilize environments through a good process. Now, problem management stabilizes business services, so that's also a key part. Getting to request fulfillment, which is a new process from an ITIL v3 point of view. Request fulfillment is done usually in two different ways. One is contacting the service desk. The other one is going through a service catalog and making a request. That's what service fulfillment is talking about. Now let's take a look at some of the other processes in operation. The last process I'll talk about in service operation is event management. Event management is a little different than the other processes listed here because, again, it's not an overreaching process. It's a process that is specific to technology. It's got service management experts involved. It's got operational technologies involved for monitoring that are specific to the different types of technologies. So it's a little bit different than these ITIL version 2 processes that I've listed here because it is so specific to different technologies. Now, the applications, technical, and operations are not really processes. Those are really management focus areas. I think that it's a little bit difficult to make this separation because technical and operations and even some applications seem to have a mixture together. I think this is an area that you're going to have to look at in your organization, figure out how am I going to separate management responsibilities for these different processes and technologies. Okay, let's talk about continuous service improvement. Continuous service improvement is absolutely key for any IT organization that wants to drive increased benefits, capabilities, and optimization into the IT organization. ITIL version 3 has implemented two new processes around that. And you can see them here that connect to service level management. That's service measurement and service reporting. My question to you is, if you do not have a service level agreement against a mission critical business service, do you even need these two processes? I want to make a couple points about continuous improvement. ITIL ignored Kaizen, which was the most successful continuous improvement plan ever. Japanese manufacturing implemented Kaizen and drove efficiency into their organization as never seen before. I believe that Kaizen should be applied to IT. I have read the Continuous Service Improvement book from ITIL and find it a little bit of a challenge. I think a simpler, faster, quicker way of generating benefits and generating benefits over a long period of time would be to use Kaizen. Okay, this concludes the presentation of the different components by book. Next, we'll take a look at all of the process components together and their interconnectivities. This is a summary slide that is more an operational view of everything we have talked about today. I'll leave this up for a little while, but if you're interested in reviewing this, go ahead and hit the pause button. It's not worthwhile for me to go through this whole thing. Then next, we'll talk about some of the questions. I've reviewed the ITIL books. I've discussed the processes in a little detail and talked about some of the interconnections. I hope this leaves you with a better understanding of ITIL version 3. Here are some of the questions I think you should think about. Number 1, is there technology there to support these processes? Without the technology, you'll need to build that yourself. Is this a follow me strategy? So as an IT organization, you can become more efficient by operating your processes more efficiently with better results, or you can implement new processes that are different than your competition is implementing. What is the return on investment on the added complexity? Because ITIL version 3 is more complex. Have you seen an adoption plan that lays out the risks and the ROIs? So there's one thing to understand the processes and another thing to actually deliver those in an operational format. At the end of the day, in implementing some of these processes, what will you have accomplished? Will you meet goals better? Will you provide business value? I think it's very important to know what you will accomplish at the end. Lastly, one of the questions I started with, is it worth achieving? What is the value on investment? Thank you for taking this journey through ITIL version 3 with me. I can be reached at www.it-optimization.com or through the email address listed below. Some of the services my company provides are metricizing your IT organization, using a rigorous progress to go from metrics to KPIs. Secondarily, using a different process than ITIL uses for continuous service improvement, the one used by manufacturing and adopted here for IT, called Kaizen for IT. Thirdly, right now, businesses do not have very many SLAs against mission-critical business services. Build your first one. Let us help you build your second one. Probably from there on, you can do it yourself. Lastly, the IT organization of the future is going to be aligned with their business customers through success and also through risk. Thank you and good luck on your ITIL version 3 implementation.